welcome back to another week's analysis behind the news. We saw a very interesting article in yesterday's Sunday New York Times Magazine, and the title of it was Off the Rails. And it's talking about the trip from Washington to New York on Amtrak and what you see as you look out the window at the declining economy. Several years ago, after the Cultural Revolution, where the Red Guards were organized and turned loose by Mao Zedong on the population of communist China, where millions of people were killed, we had a woman flee from China and come to the United States. Chinese gal, very professional. As I recall, she was a doctor of some sort. And she brought a movie with her that was taken surreptitiously from the back seat of cabs and in Beijing and out the window of the trains and so on and so forth. Now, this is before we started doing all this trade business with China, where we started to take all of our factories to China, maybe to Mexico and then China, however it worked out for any particular company, and to build up the Chinese economy. Before that, you got a very good look at life from the back seat of a taxi cab in areas of Beijing where no foreigner went. Looking out the window, taking this continuous movie of these towns and villages as you're going through them and looking at the absolute squalor that these people lived in. It even had a section on the attempt to try and bring about a steel industry, which Mao Zedong tried to do using primitive methods. Now they have a steel industry today because they bought the modern machinery from the West and built these steel factories. But in those years, they were not allowed to do that by these Western companies, at least United States, until Kissinger and Nixon opened it up. And it showed pictures of these people, for instance, with bamboo stairs to the top of these blast furnaces made of clay, where they're throwing the coke in a hole in the top. Then it showed individuals where they're going to take the runoff of molten steel coming out of these furnaces, these primitive furnaces, and they had to break the dam to get it to flow out through the chutes into the molds or wherever they were going to put it. And the man is standing in the chute with a poker poking this dam loose to get the molten steel to start moving. Well, needless to say, they estimated about 50,000 deaths in this enterprise. Anyway, the whole idea and where I'm going is that when you get away from the tourist zone, the industrial zone, the places where our businessmen visit in China and that sort of thing, the people still live in this squalor. They still live in holes in the ground, literally, in some areas. They still have to have a permit when they come from the rural areas into the cities to work and live a little bit better. If they are caught on the street without that work permit, they are expelled from the city, never to be allowed to return. Businesses, so-called public-private businesses, they have a mirror board. You have the public board. Everybody sees these managers and so forth of these businesses, but they have a mirror board made up of Communist Party functionaries. Now, they don't make the decisions. That's done by the so-called real board, but they have the ability to veto those decisions. So it is a communist-controlled environment. And if you don't believe it isn't communist, this is a picture from this morning's Wall Street Journal. You'll notice the hammer and sickle there, and it's the Communist Party is meeting to decide who the new leaders are going to be and everything. They do not hide the fact that they are communists. That's a hammer and sickle right here. So China Party fills top military posts. So this, they're all right. By the way, you'll notice that when they take a vote on any of these things, they're all holding up their hand. It's unanimous. Nobody wants to be the odd man out, because he'll be out. They don't like that sort of thing. At any rate, getting back to this article, Let me read you the opening of it. It's kind of interesting. It says, as anyone who rides Amtrak between New York and Washington knows, and then it starts to describe it, traveling south is like moving through a curated exhibit of urban and industrial decay. There's Newark and Trenton, and the heroic wreckage in parts of Philadelphia. Block after block of hulking edifices covered in graffiti. The boarded-up ghost neighborhoods of Baltimore, etc. And that's what you see when you look out the window of Amtrak between Washington and New York. It's also what you see when you get into such cities as Detroit and St. Louis and Kansas City and other areas around the country. You'll see block after block, house after house abandoned, graffiti, small mom and pop businesses that no longer exist. They're closed, boarded up, even out into the rural areas. I've been out all over the country. And in some areas of the country, they're still operating as they did years ago. But in others, it's become, I would say, close to 25% of the businesses have been closed in malls, entire malls in some cases, strip malls, business after business in the core areas of the small rural towns closed. They can't compete any longer. There isn't enough business, etc., etc. It's a sign of what is happening to our country simply because we've sent all of this industry overseas. You cannot recover. I don't care how much money you put into it. You cannot recover in this country unless you have an industrial base and a farming base. If you're not making something out of nothing, if you're not growing it or manufacturing it, you can't grow the economy. It is that simple. You can't constantly cannibalize what little is left and call it prosperity. It doesn't work. You have to create, you have to be innovative, and you have to have the freedom with which to do it. Those things are being stifled by our federal government, and I don't care who's in the White House. It's the regulatory agencies that are doing this. Right after the election, they've got a number of these things coming down that may just give us a real hard blow against the economy in relation to coal and other things. You've got to pay attention to what's going on in all of these areas because all of it together creates an economy. It isn't giving money to the banks. It isn't giving money to the housing industry. You can't do that with government and expect to actually create an economy. That's done by people, individuals with the freedom to do it. Till next week, we'll see you then.